Why is money laundering necessary? Why can't people just put their illegal cash in a safe and spend it instead of laundering it?
Over a decade ago, a gentleman I represented was a townie drug dealer. He got in a bar fight, and he hired me to help resolve an assault charge, which we were able to do by getting him some anger management counseling. And he had a similar issue about a year later. And then, again. And that itself is somewhat unusual. But something about him always seemed off. He always just seemed to have more money that he could explain, nor did he behave in the way I'd expect someone with that kind of money to behave. It was always an oddity. So, I had my suspicions. Maybe it was drugs. Maybe it was his sometimes part-time job as a landscaper. Maybe it was because his father was a wealthy doctor. But, somehow, he was raking in around $20,000 per week, all cash. Years later, he is in prison now. Not for any financial issues, but he was caught with a whole lot of heroin in his truck. See where this is going? Now, $20,000 per week sounds like a lot, but this guy was still small time. He was mostly a one-man show serving a moderately sized college town, and he had a reliable connect in New York who kept the drugs flowing. Which means he was clearing a good sum of hard cash. Setting aside the obvious law-breaking, what's the problem with that? Well, when you start amassing 6 to 7 figures in cash regularly, you start running out of things to do with cash. It accumulates. You can't get rid of it fast enough. And people, the FBI, IRS, etc., they're hunting you. This is why in several television award-winning shows, like Breaking Bad, people end up talking about money laundering. It's very hard to spend very large amounts of cash. You can only buy so many dirt bikes, and PS4s, and other petty things for cash. Many dealers, well, they'll just buy more drugs. And repeat the cycle. And many others will use drugs too. Which reduces their hoard. Their own drug dealers love receiving cash, they don't try to stop it. But suppose you don't end up in that cycle of drug dependence. So, now you've got a giant pile of cash. Now you have to store it somewhere. Under the mattress is going to get very bumpy. Cash in a safe can be stolen. You know all that drug-related violence in places like Chicago and Southern California? Half the reason drug dealers are shooting each other is because they heard a rumor the other has a large amount of cash on hand. Also, they know very well that that money isn't working for them. Most of them don't deal because they like dealing. They do it because it's the only way they know how to get paid well. Totally true, many would prefer to put that money into the financial system. Buy houses, a car, start a business, whatever. Especially for small-timers, it's just very hard and getting harder to do those transactions in cash. Almost impossible without a government agent being notified. Eventually, frequent large cash transactions raise questions about where the cash is coming from. Why? If you deposit above a few $1,000s, a bank is obligated to snitch to the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, by filing a Suspicious Activity Report, SAR. Each bank has a risk management program that obligates the profiling of customers' transactions to detect and report unusual possible, not probable, criminal activity of any source in a suspicious activity report. A CTR is filed for any cash transaction at a bank over $10,000. Banks, on their own, file reports for smaller transactions. Every cash business has this issue. Depositing cash can be a pain. Your local McDonald's? Yep, those large cash deposits generate the same SAR pretty much every day if the amount is too high. And large deposits may generate internal reports no matter what. And, obviously, drug dealers have a very hard time explaining why they're depositing so much cash. This person I mentioned above? It would just be a little hard to explain what an unemployed, high school dropout is doing depositing $50,000 in cash every week. You might say, well, why not just deposit a little bit at the time? You little felon, you. If you deposit cash under the reporting limit on multiple days to avoid reporting, that is a new, separate federal crime known as structuring. Did you notice line 35 on the SAR form? The very first thing the U.S. Treasury wants to know, is this suspected structuring? And did you notice on line 28? This is why banks ask you all kinds of probing questions about what you're doing with your money. Usually casual conversation at first, but sometimes very probing questions. Your bank is gathering evidence against you for the government. Because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Structuring is punished severely, maximum of 10 years in prison and a $500,000 fine. In fact, people have been convicted of structuring, simply for making large cash deposits, with absolutely no connection whatsoever to drugs or other illegal conduct. The government takes economic surveillance very seriously. So basically, people want to hide where the money is coming from, because the government puts barriers in place to monitor cash transactions, hoping to detect illegal activity. Now, you may think, how can I conceal the true source of cash, pay taxes on it, and make this money look totally legitimate? Well, it's complicated. To really simplify it, it goes like this. You go start or buy a legitimate business, something that deals in cash transactions. Purely for example only, let's say a car wash. You operate the car wash normally. At the end of the day, you slip some extra cash into the register or you just cook the books. You take your cash drop to the bank, depositing it into the car wash's business account. Your accountant records the income. You pay your taxes on it. And no one is any wiser. And now your money is clean. Big picture, that's what money laundering is. And of course money laundering is extremely illegal. And there are many ways that car wash owner can get caught. You have an extra 5 yuan, you can take it to buy a bottle of drink, no one knows where your money comes from. You have an extra 5,000 yuan, you use the money to buy a new cell phone. Your colleagues and friends see it, they think you earn 8,000 a month and live happily, there is nothing wrong with buying a cell phone. You have an extra 50,000 cash, you consider that it has been a long time since you had a good time last time, so you go to the bar and swing freely, and then shout out, "Tonight I will pay for everyone's consumption." You have an extra 500,000 in cash and after much thought, you think it's not a big problem. You buy an Audi A6, and your colleagues think that you have been working for many years, you must have some savings, and do not suspect the source of your money. You have an extra 5 million yuan in cash and want to go buy a house. That's when someone starts asking you how you got rich all of a sudden. The matter accidentally spreads to the tax office. In fact, no need to spread the word, it will also be found in the system at once that you have an extra property worth 5 million yuan under your name. You argue that you did a small project with your friend and split some money. You have an extra 50 million yuan in cash that you dare not let anyone know about. Your parents are only working class, your wife earns about the same as you, and your family combined won't earn that much in several lifetimes. You start secretly contacting people who have won the lottery and pretend to buy tickets every day. With any luck, one person wins 50 million yuan, and you approach him and say, "Your lottery ticket needs to pay more than 10 million yuan in taxes, I will give you 50 million yuan in cash directly to buy your ticket." So you manage to turn 50 million yuan of black money into 40 million of legal money. How good is the legal money? You achieve wealth freedom immediately. You have an extra 500 million yuan of cash, no one can win so many lottery tickets, and it doesn't make much sense to win the lottery in a row. In that case you can only open a store, a hot pot store, a milk tea store, a catering store, a studio, whatever you can get into paper bills you can open. If you are in a hurry, you will have to take the risk of finding a professional agent. If you don't have the courage to find an intermediary and can't afford to open a store, then you can only buy a room to pile money all over the bed and the refrigerator. You have an extra 5 billion in cash. How do you spend that much cash? And it's not usually all cash. You have to win the lottery every day for nearly 3 years in a row to do so. At this time, I thought that maybe only speculation in art and antiques can solve the problem. Further, you can only find a professional team, through domestic and foreign cooperation, with the help of countless bank accounts together to solve the problem. In short, 1. Why money laundering? Why not direct consumption? The day-to-day purchase of computers and cell phones, going to bars does not cost much money. People who have the ability to obtain black money are able to meet their daily consumption with their legal income. As for the extra money, if you make frequent high consumption, it may be noticed by friends and family, colleagues and neighbors. Since your spending power does not match your income, you will be investigated when someone reports it. Therefore, if you want to use it openly, you need the money to find a legal source. 2. The premise of lottery money laundering is that the previous level of technology was not sufficient to regulate transactions in the accounts of all people. With a large amount of extra money, ordinary people can find an excuse to deposit it in the bank. The people who have access to black money are basically under supervision, and it will be very difficult to launder money through traditional methods. I personally think that lottery money laundering is not good now. The core of money laundering is to find legal sources for the money. Transferring money from strongly regulated and easily regulated places to places where it is hard to regulate. Sure you can, as long as it's a small amount. You do a little under the table job that earns you €500 and you use these money to shop for groceries. Or you may do a favor to someone and make €10,000 and put them in a safe for emergencies. The problem arises when you make a ton of money. Suppose your trafficking earns you some €200,000 in cash per month. That is €2,400,000 per year. What can you do with so much money? Oh, you shop for food, some extra clothes. That will not use up loads of money. Buying cars or houses is out of the question because those transactions get tracked and will get the eye of the tax services and of the police. If you want to buy something like that, you will need to get your €2,400,000 laundered, even if this costs you a third of your original earnings. There is something more yet. In first place, if you are not stupid, you know that your life as a criminal has an end. You either will be caught or will decide at some point to disengage. If you get caught, you need to secure as much of the money you earned as possible. Why? Because you have been smart and careful, you didn't kill people, and you expect to be sentenced to 10 to 15 years. In prison you will behave, keep a low profile, so you may be out after 5 to 8 years. At that point you will still want to live comfortably for the rest of your life. If you don't get caught, you may see little point in risking prison forever. You work for 5 to 6 years, make 5 millions, get them laundered, obtain $1 million in clean money, buy yourself an apartment and a car, then invest the rest in some legal but safe business that earns you €3,500 of clean money a month. You will not live filthy rich, but be comfortable without having to work for the rest of your days. Finally, there is the most common cause. Mafia uses its criminal activities to put together the money to invest in safer legal ones. So, the money that comes from extortions go into drug dealing and from there get laundered and invested in large building projects. That is why in Italy the mafia pressures for the construction of the bridge between Sicily and Calabria. Only laundered money can be used in such a way. Indeed, these investments are the last leg of the laundering process that allows people in contact with mafia to live as rich and clean men.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future also. Don't forget to like and subscribe to you never miss a video.